They say success is the best revenge. But I think silence is better. Silence when you walk into the room they never thought you'd own. Silence when they realize the keys they need are in your hand. And silence when you remind them of the day they laughed at you for scrubbing toilets. I still remember that night our 10-year high school reunion. I'd almost skipped it. I was tired after working back-to-back shifts. I was in my faded janitor's uniform, smelling faintly of bleach, my shoes sticky from wax residue. But something in me, maybe it was pride, maybe it was hope, decided to show up anyway. I didn't think anyone would recognize me. I hadn't kept in touch. Not after the way they treated me in school. Not after what my family said when I didn't go to college like my sister, Lila. Or when I didn't get married young like my brother, Darren. I was the odd one out, the poor one, the quiet one, the cleaner of other people's messes. I walked into that decorated gymnasium, the lights shimmering like a filtered dream, and immediately I regretted it. Is that Amelia? The voice sliced through the music and chatter. Amelia Carter? Are you seriously still wearing a janitor's uniform? I froze. Of course it was Stacy. Same Stacy who once locked me in a bathroom during prom. Her face hadn't aged a day, still full of that high school mean girl shine. But the cruel smirk that aged terribly. People turned. They stared. My name echoed. Some laughed. You here to clean up after us, Amelia? And then came the icing on the humiliation cake, my own sister, Lila, from across the room, raising her champagne glass and saying loudly, "At least she's consistent." My hands clenched at my sides. I could walked out. I should walked out. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled, just slightly, and said, "Actually, I'm here to see how much hasn't changed." And then I turned and walked away. Back into the night. Back to my second job at the 24-hour diner. But inside me, something snapped and something else awakened. That was the moment. The pivot. The quiet ignition of a fire I'd been stifling for years. Growing up, I was always the invisible sibling. Lila was the beauty. Blonde, bright, popular. Darren was the golden boy, sports, scholarships, the charming smile that made MOM beam and Dad nod with approval. And me, I was the one they forgot to pick up from school more times than I could count. I stopped asking for things early. School clothes. I took hand-me-downs. Dance lessons. I watched from the window while Lila twirled in her pink tutus. I started working at 14, cleaning houses, walking dogs, stocking groceries, anything to earn my own way. College. That was a fantasy. My parents never even asked if I applied. By 18, I was working full-time as a janitor at the local high school, the same school I'd graduated from. Why don't you dream bigger? Lila once said, flipping her salon-dyed curls. You're wasting your life? MEL. Double quotes wasting. As if cleaning filth others left behind was meaningless. As if paying my own bills, feeding myself, and not begging for help was some kind of failure. What they didn't know was that I was saving, quietly, every penny I could, and I had a dream, not to be a princess, not even to be rich, but to own something, just one thing, a piece of the world no one could laugh me out of. It started with a room above a garage. Mr. Taylor, the old history teacher, was renting it for dirt cheap after his wife passed away. It smelled like mothballs and mildew, but it had 4 walls, a window, and just enough space for a twin bed and a dream. I worked nights, cleaned classrooms, wiped down teenage graffiti. I listened to real estate podcasts during shifts, learned about tax auctions, Shadowed a local property manager without ever asking for a job. When other girls were buying designer purses, I was buying used paint buckets. When others posted selfies from their weddings, I was refinishing wood floors. They thought I had nothing. I was building everything. One day, I heard about a foreclosed duplex on the edge of town. The roof was caved in. The lawn was a jungle. But I saw it and I didn't see rot. I saw potential. It cost $2,800. I had $31,000 saved. I bought it. No mortgage. Just guts. And the day I signed those papers, I cried. Not because I owned a house, but because, for the first time in my life, I felt like I owned myself. I spent the next year living in one half while slowly fixing the other. I learned how to patch drywall from YouTube, burned my hands on plumbing, fought rats, slept with a hammer under my pillow. But I did it. Eventually, I rented out the other unit, my tenant, a nurse going through a divorce. She paid $850 a month. That covered the bills, repairs, and gave me just enough to start thinking bigger. One house turned into two. Two became five. I started an LLC, Carter Properties, simple, strong, quiet like me. And all the while, my family didn't even know. They never called, never asked. I didn't mind. I was busy building, and I wasn't done. It's funny how people only notice you when they need something. By the time I owned my fifth property, I'd already stopped mentioning anything to my family. What was the point? Whenever I brought up work, they'd pretend not to hear me. When I once mentioned that I had tenants, Lila smirked and said, "Oh, managing other people's lives now sounds exhausting." They thought I was still wiping down tables. I let them believe I was stuck. Let them believe I was small, because there's something satisfying about building in silence. No one sees you coming, and when you finally do rise, it's too late for them to catch up. A year after I bought my fifth property, my parents' house went into PA foreclosure. Dad called me not to talk, not to reconnect, but to ask for help. "You still working at the school, right?" he asked. Like it was 2012. "Think you can spare a few bucks to help your old man out?" He laughed like it was a joke. But it wasn't. I paused. I could have said yes. I could have offered to pay it off in full right then and there. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "I'll think about it," because for years, they didn't think about me. Not when I was eating instant noodles 5 nights a week. Not when I was scrubbing their floors while they hosted dinner parties. Not when they told relatives I was still figuring it out while Lila's wedding was in every local magazine. So yeah, I needed to think. I did help, but not how they expected. I bought their house outright at auction. Didn't tell them. Waited until the final notice came in. Then I showed up at their door, holding the deed. "You bought our house." My mother gasped, clutching her pearls like I'd just burned down a church. "You're welcome," I said calmly. "You can stay, but it'll be under a rental agreement. First of the month, $950 due. Or you find somewhere else." The silence that followed, that was the beginning of their education. The next few months were satisfying. I wasn't cruel. I gave them the option. They could have moved. But pride is a funny thing, especially for people who never thought they'd have to swallow it. Dad paid late the first 2 months. Mom passive-aggressively criticized the repairs I made. "You painted the kitchen gray. So cold. So sterile." "I own it now," I said. "You want pink? You can buy it back." She didn't respond. Meanwhile, my business was exploding. I reinvested every penny, bought an old strip mall, then a dozen rental units across the city, then a commercial building downtown that used to host tech startups before the market crashed. It was an ugly brick box, forgotten, full of peeling carpet and flickering lights, but the location? Prime, and I got it for half the value. While other landlords were partying, I was reading lease agreements. While others were chasing likes, I was chasing liens, and soon, my name Amelia Carter was on over 20 titles. Carter Properties had employees, a leasing manager, a maintenance crew. I was no longer a janitor. I was the owner of the buildings janitors cleaned. Then one day, I got an email that made my stomach twist. Subject line: position inquiry, Darren Carter. It was my brother, my golden child brother. I hadn't seen or heard from him in nearly 5 years. I opened the message slowly, expecting some half-hearted apology or snide remark. Instead, it read, "Hi, I heard your company is hiring. I was laid off and things have been rough. Would love a chance to work together." Attached is my Sam. I stared at the screen for a long time, then clicked the PDF. Bachelor's degree, some management experience, nothing spectacular, but what caught me was the desperation in his words. The same brother who once said, "You'll be cleaning floors until you're 80, was now asking me for a job. The irony? The job he applied for was office admin in the same building I bought 6 months ago, the same building where he once interned during college. Back when I was still wearing gloves and bleach on my sleeves. I didn't reply right away. I waited until his wife emailed too. Apparently, she was applying for the front desk receptionist role. I had no idea they were struggling that badly. Their Instagram still showed fancy brunches and vacation pics. I guess they'd been reposting old photos. Typical.s. Oh, I did what I knew best. Stayed quiet, observed, gathered my thoughts, and prepared, because revenge is best served cold, and mine was just getting started. The morning of the interviews, I wore my favorite navy blue suit, the one that always made me feel like the boss I had quietly become. Hair up, heels sharp, lips in a natural gloss. I wasn't dressing to impress them. I was dressing like I belonged. Because I did. This time, no one could deny it. I stepped into the glass conference room of my downtown office building and took a deep breath. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting a warm glow across the polished floors. I remembered this space once neglected, now gleaming. Just like me, the receptionist, Melissa, peeked her head in. "Your next candidate is here. Darren Carter." I smiled without showing teeth. "Send him in." The door opened, and in walked my brother. He looked tired. His suit was a little too loose, his hair a little thinner than I remembered. The sparkle in his eyes, that overconfident glint he always carried, had dulled. He didn't look up right away, eyes on his awesome folder. "Hi, I'm Darren Carter. Thank you for the opportunity." When he finally looked at me, he froze. "Amelia?" "Good morning," I said, smoothly. "Please, have a seat." The silence stretched thick in the air. He blinked twice, like he couldn't decide if this was a dream or a nightmare. "You, the hiring manager?" I tilted my head. "No, I'm the owner." He blinked again. "You own Carter Properties?" "I am Carter Properties." I let the silence hang. He stammered. I didn't know. I mean, no one said." "I'm sure they didn't," I replied. "Now shall we begin the interview?" The questions were standard, but my presence made each answer tremble on his lips. He tried to present himself as dependable, hardworking, eager to adapt. I wanted to laugh. This was the same man who once told me cleaning toilets was beneath anyone with self-respect. Now he was asking to be my assistant. I didn't interrupt. I let him sweat through the entire interview. I even thanked him for coming in, shook his hand, and then I said, "We'll be in touch." He left without saying anything more. 10 minutes later, Melissa buzzed in. "Your next interview, Lila Carter." I took a slow sip of my coffee and said, "Send her in." Lila swept into the room like she always did, like she owned it. But this time, she didn't. And she realized that fast. "Amelia, what, wait. Is this a joke?" "No joke," I said, coolly. "Sit down." She didn't sit right away. She looked around, like expecting someone to say gotcha and break the spell. When no one did, she finally lowered herself into the seat across from me. "You're the CEO." "I'm the owner. Sole proprietor." "Yes." Her face was pale. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then let out a nervous laugh. "I mean, good for you, right? I had no idea. I thought you were still working." "Well, never mind. You thought I was still mopping floors," I said plainly. She didn't deny it. I watched her squirm, watched her pretty hands twist in her lap. The same hands that once pointed at me across the gym at the reunion. "So," I said, "tell me why you're interested in joining Carter Properties." She hesitated. "Well, to be honest, times have been hard. Jason left. The boutique failed. I need a job. What can you offer the company?" Her lip trembled. I don't know. I'm good with people. I ran some events. I can be pleasant." I raised a brow. "I see. We're not really hiring for pleasant." I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I didn't remind them of all the things they once said. I didn't need to, because they remembered. And that, right there, was my revenge. I ended both interviews with professionalism. No mockery. No reminders. Just a firm, polite, "We'll let you know." Later that week, I had Melissa send out the rejection emails. They were kind, respectful, and impersonal. I knew I'd never hear back from Darren or Lala after that. But I did. Not a thank you. Not an apology. A voicemail. From my mother, Amelia. Her voice crackled. I wanted to say, "Your siblings are having a rough time. Maybe you could be the bigger person. Extend a hand. You know how hard the world is." I listened to it twice. This was the same mother who once said, "You'll never make anything of yourself scrubbing people's messes." Now, she wanted me to save the golden children. I didn't call back. Instead, I walked to my office window, watched the cars go by, the same streets where I once rode my rusted bike to 2 jobs, the same sidewalks I used to sweep. And I whispered. No one extended a hand to me. And I smiled. It's strange, the way success shifts gravity. When you're at the bottom, no one sees you. You walk into a room, and the air barely moves. But when you rise even a little, it's like everyone starts orbiting around you. People who never spoke to me before suddenly wanted coffee chats. Realtors, bankers, ex-classmates, even old co-workers who once laughed when I packed leftover food in plastic containers were suddenly so proud of me. But I remembered the nights I worked until a.m., then caught 2 hours of sleep before scrubbing locker rooms. I remembered when my sister gave me a coupon book for Christmas and told me I probably needed it more than perfume. I remembered when my dad told relatives, "She's just doing custodial work for now until she finds something real." Well, This was real now. Real keys, real contracts, real ownership. I bought a house, not just any house. A 4-bedroom on the riverfront, white wraparound porch, garden windows, hardwood floors. I didn't have to refinish myself, though part of me missed that. I paid in cash.no, loans.no, begging.no, co signers. Just me and years of grit wrapped in silence. It was mine. Every square foot, every light switch, every locked door. And I had a housewarming, not a big party. I wasn't one for spotlights. Just a few close friends from the real estate community, some local entrepreneurs I'd met at networking events, and the team I'd slowly built at Carter Properties. We clinked glasses and laughed on that big porch while cicadas hummed under the setting sun. My parents weren't invited. Neither were Darren or Lila, but they came anyway. A week later, I found them on my porch, all 3 of them. As if summoned by shame, my mother wore her pearls. My father looked like he hadn't shaved in days. Lila had sunglasses on indoors. They brought a pie, a store-bought pie. I opened the door and stood in silence. Lila was the first to speak. "Nice place," she muttered without looking up. Mom followed with, "We were just in the neighborhood and thought we'd drop in. It's been so long." And then Dad said, "We're proud of you, Emiel." Emiel. They used to say my name like it was sour in their mouths. Now they tried to sweeten it with nostalgia. I didn't step aside. I leaned on the doorframe and asked, "What do you want?" There was no point in pretending anymore. We just thought. Mom trailed off. "You've done well for yourself." Lila tried again. "We were hoping maybe we could talk." I gave a short laugh. "About what?" "Jobs, loans, a second chance." "No," Dad said quickly. "Just family." Now that was rich. Family. The same family that never came to my high school graduation. The same family that said I was too poor to bring to Lila's bridal shower. The same family that looked at my hands and saw a mop, not a mind. "I'm busy," I said, and I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I wasn't angry. I was done, because forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about unhooking yourself from their expectations, their pity, their poisonous nostalgia. They wanted me to forget, but I remembered everything, and I wasn't going back. A week later, I got an email from Lila. No subject line, just one sentence. "I wish I had listened to you when you told me to buy that duplex." I didn't reply. She had her mansion once, her cocktail parties, her photos with curled eyelashes and champagne dreams. Now she had an eviction notice. I'd seen it. The court filing came through my office for verification. Her landlord was one of my competitors. Small world. Spoiler when you climb it. I wasn't heartless, but I wasn't a fool either. So when she asked for advice later, because yes, she eventually did, I gave her this: don't wait for someone to hand you a life. Build one with your own hands. I did. And you told me that made me low. She didn't reply to that, and I didn't expect her to. Funny thing is, the janitor uniform still hangs in my closet. Not because I miss it, because I respect it. It reminds me of where I started, what I endured. The dirt didn't make me dirty. It made me determined. And every time someone doubts me now, I remember the smell of bleach on my sleeves and the sting of laughter at my back, and I smile, because I'm not cleaning their mess anymore. I'm collecting their rent. The funny thing about time is that it doesn't care who you are, it only magnifies who you've become. And the world, the people in it, they start to notice. Suddenly, I was no longer the girl in rubber gloves. I was Miss Carter, property mogul, entrepreneur, investor. That shift, it didn't happen overnight, but it showed, and so did they again, not just my family, not just the people from my past, but the whole line of high school royalty who once walked past me like I was a stain on the tile. They started showing up in my buildings, not as buyers, not as business partners. As tenants. One of the first was Mike Lancaster, high school quarterback from King, the same guy who once accidentally spilled soda in my mop bucket and laughed about it for a week. He showed up at a property I'd just renovated, a sleek set of mid-range apartments with smart locks and gym access. He didn't recognize me at first. Miss Carter, he said, fidgeting with his ball cap. Thanks for seeing me. My credit's not amazing, but I've got solid work history. Just went through a divorce, so I'm starting over. He trailed off, finally meeting my eyes. Then the light bulb went off. His face strained. Wait, Amelia. I nodded. That's right. You're applying for Unit 2B. He nodded slowly. Yeah. I didn't know this was your place. It's one of many, I said smoothly. We do a full background and financial check before offering a lease. He swallowed hard. Right. Of course, the confidence, the swagger, it was gone. He was just a man with a duffel bag and tired eyes, standing in front of the girl he once laughed at, hoping for a second chance at something stable. I didn't deny him housing. I wasn't that kind of person, but I made sure he followed every single rule in the lease. No exceptions. He now lives 3 doors down from a teacher I once cleaned up after. She sends me thank you cards every Christmas. Mike. He avoids eye contact. In the elevator, then came Emily Chen. She was class president. Dated Mike for 3 years. Voted most likely to marry a millionaire. She became a tenant too. Her husband ran a pyramid scheme and fled the country. Left her with debt and a toddler. She lives in one of my smaller duplexes now. The one I flipped after learning to tile the bathroom floor myself. I remember that floor. It took me 3 days and 2 blisters to get it right. Emily never apologized, but she did compliment the tile. That bathroom's gorgeous, she said, glancing around nervously. You have a great eye. I smiled. I have great hands. They did the work. She didn't reply, just signed the lease and kept her head down. And Lila, she finally moved out of her fancy neighborhood. She couldn't afford it anymore. One day, her application came across my desk for a unit in a mid-tier apartment building I bought recently. Not a glamorous place, but safe, clean, and affordable. Melissa, my assistant, handed it to me without realizing who it was. I stared at the form. Her name was shaky, like her pride was still holding onto the last threads. She listed herself as a freelance event planner, income barely $1,200 a month. I didn't call her. I had the leasing agent handle it. No special treatment. No discounted rate. She got the unit, and every month, on the 1st, I saw the deposit come in. On time. No notes. Just the same name, Lila Carter. Rent, 825. Landlord, me. And that's when it truly hit me. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need screaming or gloating. The world had already done the math for me. They mocked me for being a janitor. Now they lived in buildings I owned, sent money to accounts I controlled, and sat in chairs I bought, and I never raised my voice. One day, I returned to the high school where it all started. They were celebrating their centennial anniversary and invited alumni who had made an impact. I almost didn't go, but something in me said I should. I showed up in a black pantsuit, heels clicking down the same halls I once scrubbed. Some teachers recognized me, some didn't. I sat in the auditorium and listened to speeches from former athletes, doctors, a local politician. Then they called my name. Amelia Carter, real estate developer and founder of Carter Properties. I stepped up to the mic, looked out over the crowd, teenagers, teachers, ghosts of who I used to be, and I said, they say janitors work in silence, that we exist to clean what others leave behind. But I want to say this: being invisible doesn't mean being unimportant. Every step I took on these floors was a step toward owning them. And now I do. So never let where you are determine where you'll end up. Clean the floors, yes, but do it while planning to buy the building. The applause was quiet at first, then stronger. Not thunderous, but enough, because I wasn't looking for applause. I was looking for the girl I used to be. And I think I saw her that day in the back row, nodding, wearing rubber gloves, and smiling. Success changes the air around you. People speak softer, watch what they say, dress better in your presence, not because you demanded it, but because the story they created about you no longer fits. They need to rewrite it, recast you, preferably in a role that includes them. But I didn't want them in my story anymore, especially not after everything, after the years of being overlooked, laughed at, mocked even in silence, after carrying their judgments like a second skin, after turning every insult into mortar and every humiliation into a foundation they wanted back in now. But I had rebuilt myself without them, and I wasn't about to tear that down for sentiment. Not long after the high school ceremony, I got invited to a charity gala hosted by the city's Small Business Alliance. It was a black tie event at the same downtown hotel that once turned me away for improper attire when I tried to apply for a janitorial contract in my early days. Back then, I was wearing slacks and a polo. Apparently not good enough for the lobby. Now, I was escorted to a reserved seat on the stage. The mayor spoke, then a state senator, and then me. I spoke about rebuilding communities from the ground up, about investing in neighborhoods, not just properties, about the power of second chances, especially when no one ever gave you a first one. I didn't talk about revenge. I didn't need to. The applause spoke for itself. After the event, a woman approached me. Designer dress, expensive perfume, but her smile was humble. I don't know if you remember me, she said softly, but you used to clean my classroom. Miss Rayner, English Lit. I did remember her. She was one of the few who had ever said thank you back then. Of course, I said. You taught me how to fall in love with words. She smiled wider. And you taught me something too. I just didn't know it yet. Humility, grace, and the power of consistency. We hugged. It was the kind of hug that erased 1,000 cold shoulders from the past, and it reminded me, not everyone ignored me. Some people just didn't know what they were witnessing, until it was too late. Then came the text, from Lila. Mom's not well. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know if I was ready to be the person they only reached out to when things went wrong. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard. She had a fall. Nothing broken. But the doctor said she shouldn't live alone anymore, and I can't afford to move her in with me. Darren and we're not really speaking. So, I didn't know who else to call. And there it was, the final twist in the narrative. I was no longer the forgotten daughter. I was the safety net, the fallback, the staple one. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I said, I'll think about it. Just like they always did with me. That night, I walked the halls of one of my newer apartment buildings. It was quiet, freshly painted, soft jazz playing through the lobby speakers. A place I would've killed to live in 10 years ago. Now I owned it. I stood in front of an empty one-bedroom on the second floor. Sunlight poured through the big bay window. Everything about it felt clean, fresh, like a reset button, and I knew I wouldn't let my mother move in out of guilt. I'd let her move in because I'd grown into the kind of woman who didn't need bitterness to feel powerful. She moved in 2 weeks later, signed a lease like every other tenant, paid rent discounted, but not free. We didn't talk much. Just the occasional check-in or smile in passing. It wasn't perfect, but it was peace. Lila never said thank you. Darren sent one awkward message, "You're doing well." I respect that. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I had moved on. Truly, I had turned a life of other people's trash into an empire built with discipline, silence, and a fierce belief in myself. They could applaud now if they wanted, but I wasn't performing for them anymore. In the silence of my office, I sometimes open that old janitor locker I kept. Yes, I had it shipped to my new building. The same one I used to keep my gloves and bleach wipes in. Inside is my first paycheck stub, $293.15, and a crumpled piece of paper with a quote I scribbled once when I was half asleep on a bench. They see your uniform, not your ambition. Show them. I did, and I still do. They didn't know that I had eyes and ears everywhere. I heard from one of my building staff, J9, who'd been with me since I bought my third property, that my sister Amelia and her husband Brian were going through a nasty foreclosure. Brian's once flourishing tech consultancy had crashed when they invested in a project that turned out to be a scam. Amelia, who once said I smelled like bleach and failure, was now living in a rented condo smaller than my old supply closet at the school. But I didn't reach out. Not out of cruelty, out of self-respect. Let them feel the sting of the cold floor, the same way I once had to sleep on it with no heating and a leaky roof. Meanwhile, I was in the final stage of acquiring a massive office building that had just come up for auction. It was iconic, located in downtown, glass-walled, 6 floors, once the pride of a financial firm. The name Delacroix Tower was still imprinted on the lobby entrance. I planned to rename it Phoenix Rise, a symbolic rebirth, just like mine. The day I signed the contract and sealed the deal, I treated myself to a quiet dinner in the same diner I used to clean. The old waitress, Martha, still remembered me. "Didn't think you'd still be around here," she said with a grin. "Weren't you the girl who always left business books under the counter?" That was me, I smiled, tapping the marble table with my red-tipped nails. "Those books helped more than anyone else ever did." She served me a celebratory slice of cherry pie on the house, and I sat there, enjoying the quiet power I now carried. Then it happened. I got a call from my new assistant. A family of 3, Amelia Delgado, Brian Haynes, and their daughter just submitted applications for the newly advertised roles in building management and clerical support at Phoenix Rise. I nearly dropped my fork. Did they know it was my building? I asked. Nope. The ad was neutral. They're desperate for jobs apparently. They think it's a company called Phoenix Holdings. I stared at the window, my reflection staring back at me. It was time. The job interviews were scheduled the following Friday. I decided I would be the one conducting the interviews. Personally, the irony made my chest swell. I hadn't seen Amelia or Brian in over 7 years. Last time I did, they were driving off in a brand new BMW, laughing about my stained uniform. Now they would walk into a building I owned, trying to beg for work from someone they used to mock. The night before the interviews, I stayed up late, going through old photos.me in overalls.me, crying on the steps outside the school with my first eviction notice.me, at the hospital after working double shifts, trying not to collapse. They saw a nobody back then, but the truth was, I was always becoming somebody. Friday came. I wore my power suit navy blue with a fitted blazer, hair slicked back, red lipstick for courage, and heels that clicked with authority. I sat behind the glass desk in the executive conference room. The receptionist called. First candidates are here, Brian and Amelia Haynes. Send them in. The door opened. Their faces changed instantly when they saw me. Amelia blinked, mouth slightly ajar. Brian's fake smile froze halfway. You're Amelia started. The director of Phoenix Holdings, I said smoothly. Welcome to your interview. They sat down, unsure whether to stand, flee, or cry. I let the silence stretch for a moment. Interesting. I seem to recall you both laughing at me when I was cleaning your wedding venue's bathroom. Brian cleared his throat. We had no idea this was your company. Most people don't recognize success when it's out of uniform. They squirmed. Amelia's daughter sat between them, eyes downcast. I opened. There are some S. Your qualifications are modest. You don't meet the requirements for the higher level positions. But I might have something for you. They looked up with hope. You'll be starting at $14.5 an hour, custodial, shifts from AM to PM, rotating weekends. Uniform provided. Cleaning supplies stocked nightly. Their faces fell. You're offering us janitor positions? Amelia asked, her voice sharp and small. Yes. Or you can decline and leave. Brian leaned forward. Please, our daughter. We just need a second chance. I looked at the girl, around 11. She looked like me back then. Quiet, tired. That was when I made a decision not for them, but for her. I'll give you the job. Not because you deserve it, but because she does. They both nodded silently. Before they left the room, I added one last thing. Oh, and Amelia. She turned, eyes burning with embarrassment. The bathroom? The one you made fun of me in? It's still on the first floor. You'll start there. Their footsteps echoed as they walked out. I took a deep breath, leaning back in my chair. It wasn't just revenge. It was the closing of a circle and the beginning of a new one. Phoenix Rise, indeed. The days that followed the interview were filled with a strange mix of emotion, satisfaction, relief, and a deep sense of closure. I wasn't cruel, but I was firm. I didn't need to gloat or shout. My actions spoke louder than any words could. The irony of watching my family, the very people who had once scorned me, don a uniform and step into the building I owned, it was poetic justice. But as much as this was a story of revenge, it was also a story of growth. Because owning a building, running a business, and standing tall in a world that once pushed you down takes more than just ambition. It takes resilience, patience, and an unshakable belief in yourself. I remember sitting in my office late one evening, the city lights glittering beyond the window, reflecting the journey I'd taken from mop buckets to mortgage deeds. I realized then that true power isn't about bringing others down, it's about lifting yourself up and shining so bright that no one can ignore your light. My family may have their own paths now, some better, some worse, but I am finally free from the weight of their judgment. I am no longer the girl they laughed at. I am the woman who built her own empire quietly, steadily, and with relentless determination. And so, if there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Don't let anyone's opinion define your worth. Don't let the voices of doubt drown out your dreams, and never forget that sometimes the best revenge isn't about revenge at all, it's about living your life so well that it becomes your ultimate victory. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring real-life dramas. Remember, your story isn't over until you say it is.